Preyta, Pain as a Precursor to Knowledge. Written by the Worst One. Chapter 1, Preyta. Before this book can be read and understood, it must first be felt. It is said, the pleasure in this world outweighs the pain, or, at any rate, there is an even balance between the two. If the reader wishes to see shortly whether this statement is true, let him compare the respective feelings of two animals, one of which is engaged in eating the other. Such a depiction of reality was most likely more accurate than the author of this passage supposed. The beasts here are not lions or tigers, jaguars or leopards, deers or gazelles. Here the beasts are man. In our current state, they are Preyta. Preyta, Sanskrit, Standard Tibetan, Yedags, also known as hungry ghost, is the Sanskrit name for a type of supernatural being described in Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Chinese folk religion, known for undergoing suffering greater than that of humans, particularly an extreme level of hunger and thirst. These beasts, however, used to be human, but now, because of misdeeds in a previous life, they are left to this fate. Preyta is the current state of man. Think, for example, of the act of victory and defeat. These two actions are causally linked, one cannot be separated from the other, yet in this action, both are left longing, desiring something more. Man is ever hungry, ever thirsty, ever longing. Think again to the example of the animal engaged in eating the other. One animal is dead, and never again will return, yet the other will be hungry again. Satiety is fleeting, yet appetite is eternal. As such is Preyta, and the knowledge of such reality makes one a Preyta. This fact is an essential part of human existence. However, since there are now many of those who act only to consume, they know only the hunger that is born from satiety, not the pain brought about by the feasting, and because of this, and the fact that they do not know Vanya, they act as if the world in which we live is fair, as if both good and evil abound in equal part, as if one only knew satiety and hunger. This is the logical conclusion that would be arrived at. Even now these people might very well think they know pain. They might hear about the many disasters on the news, or the plight of those who are marginalized by society. However, pain is not a fact, it is not a statistic, it is not a number, it is a feeling. Those who have not felt pain, who have not been afflicted by the feasting, can never know the pain which it brings about. Think even of the quantification of personal pain. There is no objective measure. They do not measure impulses in the brain or receptors on the skin. Rather, they ask you to rate this feeling, and even then think of the various types: hot, stinging, aching, pulsing, burning, each a different form of pain, that is only known by one's own feeling of such pain. There will come a time very soon, at the advent of the next generation, give or take, when pain will be known by all will know the feast, and all will know the feasting. At that point, it will finally be said, let us do away with this world, and create a new one, for truly this reality is a hell. Eli Eli lama sabachthani, the last words uttered by Jesus Christ when he lay on the cross: my God, why hast thou forsaken me? End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, The Attainment of Knowledge. The idea of facts over feelings, or reason over emotions, has become a common notion after the dawn of the Enlightenment. The idea that humans are, unlike the beasts, rational, and able to think through ideas in order to achieve a certain end. However, there lies the point: what end do we aim to achieve? There are an infinite number of facts within the world. However, these facts alone are irrelevant. When told a random bit of information about reality that holds no bearing on one's life, the most instant and accurate response to this information is "okay, now what?" followed by the memory fleeting from the mind. Facts and feelings have been seen as being the antithesis of one another, but in reality, they should act in harmony. The only relevant facts are those facts which are felt. Facts are like water in a container. It is the container itself that shapes the water, and the water itself simply aids in giving the container mass. For this reason, simply explaining the problems of the world is not sufficient to impact the individual until these facts are not just seen, but felt. Knowledge, in order to be acted upon first, is in need of a body, a way in which to interact with the world, and through this body, facts about the world are able to be discerned. If only the body is the same, can two facts have the same perlocution? An event is as much the experience itself as the person experiencing it. Think, for example, of two people receiving a diagnosis. The diagnosis for both is the same. There is a small malignant tumor on the left side of your abdomen. For one there is the feeling of elation, however, for the other, there is a feeling of dread. The reason for this is simple. One man had a large cancer on his right side and the news informed him that the cancer had decreased in size. However, for the other that had had no cancer prior to this was his first encounter with the disease. Here the objective facts are the same, however, the effects of these facts are completely different. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Retaining of Knowledge. One often forgets their past pain due to changes in one's container. As one's container is malleable, their perceptions of their previous pain are now tinted by their current experience of the world. If it was not so, then the memory of such an event would elicit the same response. Think for example of PTSD. Such is an example of a traumatic event in which the shape of one's container has not yet changed. It is not so much that they forget the pain, but rather they have now become a new person, and because of this, they no longer know the same experience of such pain. Events such as these happen regularly, especially in the lives of those who are famous. The commonality of the adage, "the fame is going to your head," exemplifies my point. If it was that your past and present self were to stand face to face with one another, the pain of the younger would be known less to the older. The greater the difference in age, the greater the dissipation of both the feeling and the knowledge of pain. This can be said on an even wider scale for intergenerational pain. As the saying goes, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Such is an example of how pain is forgotten, and why, for something to truly be known across time, both the knowledge and the emotion, the facts and the feelings must be present. You cannot have one without the other, and a unified knowledge of pain shall soon be known. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, The Ensuing Miasma. Part 1. I have spoken about the evils of the world, and how pain is in excess when compared to pleasure. However, I have not spoken about whether or not this life as a whole has gotten better or worse, whether there is more or less pain in the world now. Philosophers such as Steven Pinker will say that there is less pain and suffering in the world now than there was before, and because of this, there is also more pleasure. However, this is an extremely myopic way of looking at the world. Here I will go through the points Pinker makes and elaborate on why they are incorrect. 1. We're biased toward negativity. We erroneously expect destruction. In general, our personal danger calculation has more to do with instinct and optics than reason and logic. Someone intending us harm causes more worry than something that buzzes and doesn't. Danger can be difficult to accurately cognize. Pinker here seems to have a misunderstanding of the problem of pain and worry. You cannot rationalize a feeling or an emotion, and you cannot negate feelings and emotions through said rationalization. If this was the case, then when treating phobias, psychologists would just lay out the facts of how irrational the phobia actually is, but that's the point. You cannot rationalize an irrational fear, as irrationality is endemic to said emotion. Pinker here seems to think that we can think of emotions as math problems. If someone has a fear of planes, and then someone gives the stats on how little planes actually have problems, that person should then have no more fear of flying. This is not at all how humans work, and Pinker even says this fact, stating that we are biased towards negativity, yet the flaw here is what Pinker says implicitly, that being that we should not be this way, such an attempt is a fool's errand. It would be a better use of one's time to strike down God to earth and create a new Eden. 2. Progress marches unnoticed. You enter a time machine that will spit you out as a random newborn at a random location during a particular moment in human history. You know nothing about who you will be, your social status, class, race, intelligence, or nationality. The decision you must make is simply the year. Pinker says you should choose this year, or at least a year close to the present. The more recent the date, he reasons, the better your chance at a favorable birth lottery. Thus, progress. Before I get into this, I want to bring up alchemy. It is said, humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain something, something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law, the law of equivalent exchange. This idea that life is in this constant progression forward isn't true for various reasons, but in order to debunk Pinker's point, I don't even have to engage fully with the point. I personally know many people that would prefer to live in the 20th century, for multiple reasons, the main one being having a family structures and general society. I know many people that would want to go back to the 18th century for religious reasons. I even know some people that would want to go back to the times of before the advent of Christ, as they want to return to nature. There isn't just one or two of these people. There are entire groups, anarcho-primitivists, traditionalists, theocratists, etc. These people all preferred different time periods to the one that is so obviously espoused by Pinker as being the right answer. 3. Our neighbors are happier than we think. Pinker says that most of us underestimate the number of other happy Americans by about 40%. When it comes to our compatriots, since we obviously can't peer into their minds, we make assumptions based on what's visible to us, Pinker tells me. Since those visible are those on the news who suffer, the general picture of our countrymen tends to be pretty bleak. Pinker seems to again either misunderstand some fundamental concepts about humanity or think that these concepts should change, without offering any way in which to change them other than just saying they are wrong. For all humans, perception is reality. If most of us underestimate the number of other happy Americans by about 40%, then although not a correct evaluation of reality, the feeling in and of itself is still valid and dictates people's actions and feelings. Again, you cannot rationalize our emotions. My biggest problem with what Pinker says here and his general ideas about the world isn't any problems with his data or even the conclusions that he comes to from his encounters with the data. Rather, my main problem with what Pinker says here is a misunderstanding about the nature of pain. Part 2. The chief killer of joy and pleasure is comparison. The enemy now is not another nation, it is existence itself. It is said, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." Such a phrase has never been more true. We are constantly shown, at the same time, how both good and bad the world is, that it has become evident that there is no real enemy to fight. The enemy that we fight is that which we could have been, if only. Take two people, both of them are able to lift 100 kilograms on bench press. For one, he is one of the strongest people around. However, for the other, he is one of the weakest, with many of his friends being stronger than him. Although nothing to do with the material conditions of these two are different, the joy derived from these two actions is antithetical to one another. Take this example and stretch it to the entire world. On social media we are constantly bombarded by people who are infinitely better than ourselves, in every single way, shape, and form. They are quite literally just a superior species. This constant perception works against our brain's mapping. Before, when you were in a tribe, and there were a lot of people doing better than you, it meant that you were doing something wrong, and you had to change something. This was an essential part of our evolution. Now, however, even if you are in the top 10% of the population, there are still 800 million people who are better than you. This wasn't a problem, because you were not able to see these people, but now it is near enough impossible to not see them. Here lies the issue: our brains love to generalize. This is why cherry-picking is such a good way to convince people of your points. We don't see that this person is in the top 0.001%, and if he was in our tribe, he would probably be acknowledged as some sort of god. All we see is that there are 80,000 of them, and that's one hell of a number of people to be inferior to. Reality itself has waged war against us. The faculties of our own mind now work as countermeasures against our own happiness. The fact that we now, as we never have been before, are bombarded with constant perfection, constant visages that are so superior to ourselves, it seems almost as if we are different species. Yet it is ingrained in us, carved into our very core, the idea of comparison. All human life is comparison. Think even of our vocabulary. That which makes good is that it is better than that which is worse. That which makes hot is that it is warmer than that which is cold. All adjectives and adverbs are comparative in nature, and even nouns are the same. What is a hammer that is not good at hammering? A chair that is not able to be sat in? A pen that is not good at writing? Each descriptive name in which we give objects is prescriptive in their nature. one's name is the title of superiority over another. Part 3. People are not just bombarded by how good the world is, or rather just how much better everyone is compared to ourselves, but also just how bad it is. Perception is reality, how the world actually is, and raw stats about the world rarely affect how we subconsciously engage with the world. However, anecdotal emotional evidence affects us greatly. The fact of whether or not there is more famine, or wars, or crimes, or death, or sickness does not matter to us normal folk. It never has, and it never will. What matters is whether we see more famine, or wars, or crimes, or death, or sickness. How can we know, if we are not able to see? A fact unfelt is a fact unknown. Our eyes have been shrouded so long by the cruelty of the world, that even if we could see the truth, the existence of such light would simply aid to blind us. A nocturnal creature, even during the day, sees no light. Part 4. Reality, for the first time, now has some competition. Technology allows us now to live out some of our fantasies that we would never be able to explore without it. To be a king, a queen, a knight, a dragon, when talking about escapes from the real world, or even changing characteristics of ourselves that were once seen as immutable, such as transitioning. This, along with the ensuing miasma mentioned in parts 1 and 2, is more than enough to cause someone to leave reality behind for good. Technology will only get more and more real, as time goes on, until it gets to the point that the world of technology, Vonya, will become objectively better than the world of reality. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5, Vonya. Those who are in pain need a voice, as when pain is known by all, such people who became the voices of those who felt pain will become the leaders of society. However, there are some who wish to use those who know pain in order to simply increase their own pleasure, whilst also increasing the pain of another. For this reason, I ask one favor of you: become a voice for those who feel pain, learn to speak, and speak loudly for them. Become a Preyta. When the time comes when pain is felt by all, there shall be no quiet before the storm, no peace before the chaos, no respite before the attack. In Vonya there shall be only peace, only joy, and only love. Worlds like these can be created, and soon enough this shall be so. For our ambition,